to just sort of mix and roil in sight, sound, smells, tastes, tangibles, and all sorts of ideas and fantasies and so forth. And so the whole point of meditation is to try to gather back in that wild, frantic energy that is moving us, gather it back and see if we can't subdue it a little bit so as to get a glimpse of this undisturbed, tranquil, pure mind that's fully aware and fully functioning in a wondrous way rather than in its disturbed, scattered way. So the first part of the meditation tonight would be focusing on the physical, which is actually bringing back the sense organs a little bit. You're quieting and subduing them so they're not so inclined to be running out after the sense object so much. That little verse reminds me, of course, of Maine. I'm still thinking of Maine, so I haven't let go of Maine. Still in my consciousness. When I'm in Maine on a really, really calm, quiet morning, I'll go out in the kayak, and when there's no wind at all, this huge lake just becomes like milk. That's all I can describe. Milk on a quiet table. It's so calm and so undisturbed that if I don't paddle, I don't move. I just sit there. And so what interested me was, on that day I go out, I'll take a camera and I'll take a picture of the clouds in the sky, and then I'll take a picture of the lake, and then I'll show it to people, and they can't tell the difference. And the reason they can't tell the difference is because when the lake is that calm, the clouds just perfectly reflect as they would in the sky. There's no distinction. And sometimes I even take it and I turn it upside down. For example, I'll take the shoreline and take a picture of trees reflected in water, and I turn upside down, and people can't tell, well, which one's the water, which one's the sky. So that's a kind of non-duality, I guess, with a calm mind. I just thought of that with that verse. Anyhow, that's often used as a metaphor or an image of the mind when it's calm and undisturbed. It perfectly reflects the myriad things without any kind of filtering or any kind of distortion. And so the calm mind in that meditation is aiming to recover, but not to give. Meditation doesn't give it, it just helps recover or restore it, is like that. So when we sit on the first part of the physical sitting is to literally gather back eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body. Now, mind will come in the next two dimensions. We talk about the breathing. But in this first phase, what we're simply doing is developing a physical posture that can help corral the sense organs. So what we do is a sitting posture. And there's dimensions. So we're going to sit. When you sit, your spine is very straight. They say like a stack of coins lined up perfectly straight. It's not slumped like this. Okay, it's not curved like a bow, nor is it like this, hyper. And I've seen people do that. They kind of, I'm going to sit. You know, the chest goes out and the back arches, and this will tire you out in no time. So what you want to do is just have a straight spine, sitting relatively upright. The ears would align with the shoulders. So again, the head's not too far forward and not too back. The ears, I mean, this is given that we're born with normal body and your ears aren't here, they're not there, they're here where they generally they're supposed to be. They line up with the shoulders, and the shoulders line up with the hips, so you have a straight plane. Ears, shoulders, hips in a straight line. Okay, so that's the back. And then the legs, and I'm going to use my model here tonight. By the way, he's a Westerner from Holland who wasn't brought up Buddhist, so if he can get his legs into these positions, anybody can. It's not like Asian legs, okay? So if he'll come up, you demonstrate. First, just do cross-leg. Do cross-leg. So this is the cross-legged. You just sit up straight, the back is that, but the legs are just crossed. And this, sometimes for beginners, is the easiest for them to do because it's too painful to get into the others. The next one is called half lotus, and that is where you see one foot is put on one thigh and the other one is still tucked underneath. And it doesn't matter which one. You can do left leg on right thigh or right leg on left thigh. Either one would be considered half lotus. Okay? And then the max position is called full lotus, and he will demonstrate that. Yeah. Eats rubber for lunch. Now, in this one, the left foot goes on top of the right thigh, and the right foot goes on top of the left thigh. And that's called full lotus. And you'll notice also his knees are flat, so they're not arched up, because some of you can get that position, but then your knees go up like this, and it's not very comfortable. So eventually the knees will be flat, and this is called the Vajrasana, or the diamond posture, and you can see, in a sense, he's got a triangular base, which is very stable. The spine and the two create the stable base. And it's also called the Vajrasana in the sense that it's a posture conducive to anchoring the mind in a kind of solid position. Now, as he's sitting there, that's the legs. So we've done spine and legs. Do cross leg, do half lotus, or do full lotus. If you start with cross leg, go to half eventually. If you start with half, go to full. And just take your time doing this. Don't be in a hurry, because being in a hurry is not meditation. Being lazy is not meditation either. So too slow, too fast, neither is meditation. Just, go slowly, evenly, keep a steady pace. Okay. Thank you. He's gone. He's gone to the other show already. So that's the legs. Now, the arms, then this part of the arms rest on the thighs. So you're not holding them up. Let them relax and rest on the thighs. Left hand's on the bottom, right hand's on top. Thumbs gently touch. Just gently closing the circle like this. It's nothing special. You're not doing a mudra or anything like that. You're just letting the hands rest. Thumbs resting. The forearms rest on the thighs, which allows the upper shoulders to relax. If you have them up like this, the shoulders become tight, so you relax them. Okay, so now we've done spine, legs, hands, arms. Next is the head. You can start with the head completely straight so that your eyes are looking directly in the horizon, and then just let it come down a little bit, just a little bit off of perpendicular, so to about so. Now, at this time, you want your teeth not to be clenched and tight. You can do this at night when you sleep and grind them away, but during meditation, let your teeth just relax and let your jaw relax. This is really important because a lot of people carry tension really in the jaw grinding. So let your teeth relax so that there's a little space between them. And then your tongue curls gently and just touches right behind the top of the front teeth. So that's called the hard palate. And if you bring your tongue back a little bit and then it goes up, go concave, that's a soft palate. So you want the tongue just to curl gently and touch just behind the teeth. Not pushing, not pressure, just gently curled and touching. And that keeps an energy circuit, we'll get into it later, but this is an energy circuit running up and down in this direction, and that closes that out. And so as you get more adept in your practice, you'll start to feel an energy circulation occurring on this line or this meridian. And it's really quite interesting. So just let the tongue rest there, the mouth and jaws relax. And now, the last phase is practice this. It's the contemplation where it says the eyes regard the nose regards the mouth regards the shin, the mind or the heart, which is located 2 inches below the navel and 2 inches in. So it's a kind of a space that's not a space, but it's actually a focal point where you want to bring your concentration. Now to do this, the eyes just look off the tip of the nose about at a 45-degree angle forward. And then your eyelids close almost completely, but they're open just a little bit. Now this will take some practice. If you're used to meditating with your eyes closed, you'll have to reverse that habit. If you aren't used to that, don't develop that habit. So let your eyes gently close, if you will, all the way, and then slightly bring them up just as you were raising a shade like 4 or 5 inches off the bottom of the windowsill. So the eyes come up. They're looking off the nose at a 45-degree angle, but they're not focused on anything because they're not open enough to see clearly. Nor are they closed so that you don't see anything at all. And now the inner contemplation, you obviously can't do this because your nose can't regard your mouth, literally. And so it's an inner way of dropping your focus or concentration by saying, and now your nose regards your mouth, and your mouth then drops down and regards this area here. And so the center of your attention, the center of your balance, and if you look at the posture, there's a convergence of lines right down to this area. I can bring you illustrations next time to show you this, but it's an actually interesting, very geometrically centered position. So that's the sitting posture. I'll say this now, but then we'll go over it next week and the next 2. Now the whole thing is, once you're there and in that posture, really let your body relax. Let your body completely relax. No tension anywhere, not in your hands, not in your shoulder, not in your neck, especially not in your stomach area or your solar plexus. So the tummy gets really soft and relaxed, like a sleeping baby's tummy. That kind of feeling. And when you do that, your energy will naturally expand, your energy will start to move, and also your breathing will slow down and become more natural. So next week we'll go into the breathing, but I want to stress that while you're in this posture, once you get everything set, really let your whole body just become like silk, just really soft, relaxed, no tension whatsoever. Okay, that's just reviewing the physical. Any questions on that? Yes?
Why right hand on top?
Why right hand on top and not left hand? Well, let me start by saying, first of all, I am not teaching you anything I invented. So I'd like to claim credit for all this. I can't claim credit. I learned this from my teachers who learned it from their teachers who learned it from their teachers. And it, as far as I can tell, it hasn't changed. Putting the tongue. Why the tongue on the roof of the mouth? Well, the explanation I got for that, and then my experience in doing it, was exactly what they say it does. It actually closes a meridian channel that gets the energy moving in that circle, and it's really quite interesting. From there, it radiates out and so forth. The right hand and left hand, I don't know why that's there. That's just presented. And the one thing I would say to everybody is just buy into this form as an experiment and allow yourself to enter it deeply over a long period of time. And some of this will probably reveal itself to you, why the hands are that way and not another. But it has to do with a sort of polarity and movement of prana or chi or energy. Now, that's what I'm saying. So you can get really attached to this and then you think it's a physical thing. It's not. This natural flowing of the energy comes with dhyana 24/7 if you're there. But we have so lost it in the way we've been scattered and uptight because our minds and thoughts and emotions then affect our body and the flow of our blood and our neurotransmitters and everything else. And so our whole wiring system is whacked out by that. This helps you get a feel, a kind of, oh, wow, yes. I'm relaxed and I can all of a sudden feel a thought or something stir, and you can feel it radiate through and change that composure and composition. And it's really an interesting laboratory experiment. But what you have to do is just give it time to allow yourself to watch and observe the feedback between the posture and the breathing and the mental concentration, and then what's happening inside as this all goes. So it's really, I'm presenting a method or a form that you take up and practice. And it's very simple. It doesn't require any major purchases at REI or anything to do this. I mean, you can go online and buy some fancy pads, $200 this, and $300 pillows from hulls that were blessed by so and so. But it doesn't matter. You can sit on a towel for Pete's sakes, or nothing. So don't get caught up in thinking you have to buy something special for this. You don't have to buy anything special. You don't have to put a crystal in your hand or anything like that. Just sit. Just take it. You don't need clothes, but please come dressed to this class. Don't get into naked sitting. Other than that, it reveals itself to you in the process of doing it, which is all I can say. So rather than invent another method, try to stick to this one. It's the same I learned when I was studying martial arts. By just learning the basic forms properly, even though they seemed unnatural to me, once I was in the forms, I could feel the movement of chi and energy and feel the responsiveness come that the form itself generated. So this form, this sitting form, with the breathing and the mindfulness contemplations, will actually start to transform your physiology. And it will have effect on your feelings and your thoughts and emotions, on your temper, on all of these things will start, and on your health, and on the complexion of your skin, and your blood pressure and everything else. So this is pretty interesting. Done correctly, probably will get rid of most HMOs, and probably a lot of therapists, but, you know. So there we go. Buddhism's bad for the economy again. I keep doing this. Yes?
How do you keep your shoulders straight and relaxed at the same time? It's hard.
Well, because if you do it this way, they're going to bend forward. But if you're sitting up straight, they naturally will go down straight. Your elbows will go down because your elbows are back by your hips. See, but if your elbows are forward, then it'll want to go this way. You bring them back. It's like you didn't take the hanger out of your clothes. So your hanger's and you're hanging there on your hanger. The hanger's in your shoulders, right? If you hang your clothes up straight, the arms, well, I mean, assume you have clothes, so if I hang my sport coat up straight on the hanger, the arms go down. If the hanger's bent, then the arms will go forward. So it's sort of like that. I don't know if that helps. Yeah, okay. Good questions. Anything?
Why do you not close your eyes in installation?
Aha. Why do you not close your eyes? And again, this will come as you experience, but I can tell you what the text say and what my teacher said, and I know from my own experience. If you close your eyes, you will go into a kind of what they call sinking into dull emptiness. You go into a reverie type of state where the internal thoughts and emotions, almost like when you're sleeping, the dream state will just come up and overwhelm because the consciousness or awareness sinks internally into a dark and dull emptiness, it's called. If they're open too much, you become agitated and excited and hyper. So you strike a balance where they're open, and so they're not really leaving the world, but they're closed enough so that you're not really being pulled in and connecting with the world either. And it's in that equilibrium that the meditation topic or whatever you can use can start to penetrate. So as you move on in your meditation, often people have trouble with sleeping and drowsiness. They'll start sitting, and all of a sudden, which is I call chicken meditation, because and then you snap back up like you're picking up corn. And they'll start, and then pretty soon they'll enter samadhi, which is completely over. And sometimes they can do it. Can you do it in full lotus?
Sleeping?
Yeah. Can you?
Yeah.
Yeah, bend over. Can you bend? Look at this. Well, no, can you go down? Yeah.
But I'll wake up before I'm done.
Oh, but if you put a couple pillows here, I've seen people in full lotus sleeping and snoring. And you hit them and wake up and say, "Don't bother my meditation." You weren't meditating, man. Yeah, I was in this deep. Oh, why is my neck hurt? So, the purpose of it is to keep a middle way between a false emptiness and an overexcited engagement. And so having the eyes just slightly open maintains that delicate balance. It will keep you from falling asleep if done properly. And that's an important aspect as people start to meditate, because often what happens is as your thoughts move, so will your body. So once your thoughts move off their meditation topic, the next thing that'll happen is the body will just go down and fall asleep. So anytime somebody's doing this, it means their mind is mirroring that. It's like, what are they saying? Like, Om Mani Padme Om's my meditation, right? And I'm Om Mani Padme Om Mani Padme Pizza. Oh, back, Om Mani Padme IPO, oh, boom, back. As soon as the mind moves off, the body then falls. Having your eyes slightly open allows you to maintain just that enough of awareness that doesn't allow that to happen so easily. Okay? So give it a try. Okay, yes?
I was just noticing I was sitting there with nothing covering my legs.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually, I've
come to notice it's actually very uncomfortable for my legs. Sit in meditation without having the legs covered. They start hurting much earlier. So, just a suggestion for people.
Yeah, I mean, next week we can bring up a lot of this. The reason for covering the legs is really just mainly temperature and cold. You don't want to be sitting in cold temperature. So I know you've seen movies with, macho meditators out on rocks in the snow and everything like this. Just, it's not the middle way. It's good for movies, but it's not good for your legs, and you'll probably get arthritis. So what you want to do, if it's cold, cover them. But in a temperature like this, no need to. However, if you're sensitive, then do what you need to do. Yeah, no. It's like
Even in this temperature, I notice it.
so. Find a way that you can keep that balance. My teachers did not recommend sitting on cold surfaces like concrete floors or ice, anything like that. So sometimes the pads are just meant to create. When we were meditating outside, we used to get these insulate pads that you use under your sleeping bags. Now they use blow-up foam things that are about this thick. So, but those insulate pads are very thin, but they're sealed so that no moisture or cold can get through them. So we would use those to sit outside and then cover the legs. Okay? Don't wear too many clothes in the sense of if you get too warm, you'll get drowsy and fall asleep too. So if you can, keep your head uncovered. If you need to, wear a scarf around your neck. It'll keep a lot of warmth in. Okay, should we go to the text? Because I promised I'd finish up this chapter tonight. I'm going to try. Who's laughing? I heard a giggle. Okay, fine. So we're continuing on the bottom of page 34. Page 35, and this is the ending of chapter 2. Wait till everybody has a copy. Okay, again, page 34, towards the end of chapter 2. And the text, I'll just read the whole text right through and then we'll take apart. If you hope to teach and transform others, you yourself must have skillful means. Do not raise doubts in others, and their essential nature will manifest by itself. The Buddha Dharma is right here in the world. There is no awakening apart from this world. To search for Bodhi somewhere beyond this world is like looking for a rabbit with antlers. True seeing is world transcending, and false seeing is the worldly. False and true both set aside, the Bodhi nature naturally appears. This verse is the direct teaching. It's also called the great ship of Dharma. Confused, you might listen for ages. Unconfused, you get it in an instant. Okay, so we'll finish up the verse section here and then go to the closing lines. So he's coming to the end of his first teaching, and he's really mapping out what's called the direct teaching. Dun Jiao. How am I with tones? What's the Dun first?
Dun.
Fourth. Fourth, thank you. And Jiao is two? Fourth. Oh, fourth tones. So they're two. Wum, wum. Dun Jiao. Okay, so the Chinese is Dun Jiao, which is we've translated as the direct teaching, and I'll explain why we don't call it the sudden teaching, which is sometimes another meaning for Dun. So he says, if you hope to teach and transform others, and now he's going from, hopefully you got this, you're understanding the teaching, and part of understanding the teaching and part of the awakening in his mind is that you are naturally having feelings of compassion at this point. So if it's a true awakening, and you're truly seeing the links that all living beings have in this fabric, you immediately have thoughts of compassion and kindness. And actually, there's a later stage where enlightened beings, which is where Bodhi means enlightened or awakened, it's that almost last line there, have their awakening and see this absolute interconnectedness and make these vows to forestall a complete and perfect enlightenment for themselves until they're able to help take across and teach countless other living beings. And so they make vows to continue to return into the world to teach and transform out of this compassion. But he says if you hope to teach and transform others, it's not easy. I mean, it's not, he's not saying that, but it isn't. It's tough. And he says, you yourself must have skillful means. This in Sanskrit is upaya, or fangbian in Chinese. And it means the ability to adapt the teachings to the situation and the circumstances, to the person and their conditions. And this has to do with this idea that these teachings are not absolute dogmatic principles existing out there in space, but they're rather expedient devices, or as the Buddha said, they're medicine to cure different illnesses. And so each teaching is a kind of medicine that dispensed according to the patient's symptoms will produce a healing effect, after which the medicine has served its purpose and no longer be kept. And so he said, my teachings are the same way. Basically, since the essential nature is whole and complete, why would you need any teaching? The teachings only arise because we forget or lose sight of this. We get sick, so to speak, and therefore a restoration occurs through the teachings. And so therefore the teachings have to be appropriate and timely and skillfully given to everybody's circumstance. The wrong teaching to a person can actually not only go off like water off a duck's back, but it can be harmful. So you can't waste the teachings, you can't waste people. That's where it's skillful means knowing what exactly to do in the situation to say to somebody. And I remember when I first thought I was really awakened, I was going to go home and teach my parents. I had no skillful means. I won't even tell you the stories, but the first one occurred over Thanksgiving. How can you eat that living bean turkey on the table? I won't join you. Not very skillful. After my mother slaved for 6 hours to do this, prepare the meal, the whole family was gathered there. I'm going to do the Thanksgiving prayer. And it's like, who are you praying to and why are you eating meat? Not skillful. Anyhow, so the next line actually follows from this, because if you don't do it skillfully, if you don't apply it, you'll cause people to have doubts. And doubt then becomes an obstacle. When there's no doubts, the essential nature manifests by itself. But when you cause doubts and misgivings, and that includes fear and anxiety in people, you cause them not to take the medicine, not to want to take the medicine, because it's not skillfully applied. And the doubt has to do with, basically, there's a list. It's very interesting. They'll doubt the teachings themselves, the methodology. They won't, but they'll doubt the teacher who is conveying this. But most importantly, they'll doubt themselves. They'll doubt their own abilities to have this awakening experience, and the doubt will then lead to a kind of paralysis and stopping. So it's very much connected. You want to teach and transform, remember this is medicine. In order to teach and transform effectively, you have to be skillful. If you're not skillful, you'll create doubts. When you create doubts, people then wander lost for a long, long time before they find their way back to these teachings. So it's not so simple. In fact, I'm not making this up. There's a sutra called the, not the Vimalakirti Sutra. What was the other one we were studying? The Lankavatara. In the Lankavatara Sutra, the Buddha actually says to Subhuti, he says, I'll tell you, Subhuti, if a teaching is not given to the person and the situation, it isn't a teaching. Whoa. In other words, if Dharma is not given expediently to the situation and the person to cause this effective liberation and understanding, it is not Dharma. So you can't say, well, I spoke Dharma for them and they all ran away. No, it wasn't Dharma you spoke. According to the Buddha. I'm not making this up. Okay, then the next line says, very interesting, the Buddha Dharma is right here in the world, and there's no awakening apart from this world. So this means that in the existential situation we find ourselves, that's the way place. If you want to say that's the temple. The temple is not some abstract or architectural place that you go to get away from the world. The world is actually right underneath now, here, in one's own being. And it doesn't mean just the world as we describe, if you want to use this language like There's world transcending, there's worldly, which this text and most Buddhist sutras don't recognize because they're just differences in mind. But he's saying not just the world in general, but it means in all your affairs and activities, in all your relationships now and everything you're doing, that's the ground of awakening. That's what it means in the world. So you can't get awakened by avoiding the reality of your situation right now. All your thoughts, all your feelings, all your entanglements, all your goodness is all part of that ground that leads to awakening. And your ability to see this, or the fact that it's occluded and you can't see it, is also the ground you have to work from. Because nobody in this teaching can give it to you. It's not dispensed. It's not handed out. It's not a gift or even a grace it's actually something that comes up from the ungrasping, the unbound, the letting go, and the opening of your own nature. So this is why he's saying this. Because he's kind of encouraging people to not go off in metaphysical, esoteric pursuits for something, because it'll end in disappointment. There's no ground of awakening except the ground that's given to you to till by your very nature of being a person. So it's your personhood or your humanity that, once perfected, is the actual place of awakening, not by leaving it or denying it. And he says, to make it more graphic, he says, you want to look for that, it's like looking for a rabbit with antlers. Now, technically speaking, before bioengineering, rabbits without antlers was a really apt metaphor. But now they have fish that glow in the dark. I mean, it's like looking like a fish that glows in the dark, but now they have fish that glows in the dark. So, and eventually, I suppose, they'll have rabbits with antlers. Maybe they do already. Come on, it's happening, right? Okay, Frankenstein stuff. Anyhow, the metaphor still works because you haven't seen a rabbit with antlers, and you're not going to see someone get awakened except through cultivating the ground of their own being. Then he goes to the next line. He says, true seeing is world transcending. So he's going back to this idea. What is world transcending? Seeing things as they really are. That's it. You see things as they really are, right here and now, in the everyday, seeing them clearly as they really are, that's transcending. And if you're confused about it, you're not seeing clearly, which he calls false seeing, then that's worldly. So worldly and world transcending are not different places. There's just different perceptions within the same place. Awakened, everything is worldly and world transcending simultaneously. Not awakened, it's worldly and world transcending seems very, very far off. And when these mind, the false and true, are both set aside, your Bodhi nature naturally appears. Wow. Now he ends and he says, this verse is the direct teaching, Dun Jiao, God, thank you. It's also called the great ship of Dharma, meaning it is a vehicle or a vessel that you can use to cross over from one shore to another. He says, if you're confused about this, you might listen for ages, and you still, implied here, won't get what it's talking about. If you're unconfused, you'll get it in an instant. You'll understand, hey, that's the way it is. Just as I eat to make myself get full, and I wear clothes to keep out the cold, and I sleep to get a rest, I have to work on me to become awakened. There's no other way to do this. So, the direct teaching, to say a little bit about that, it's direct. That's the dun we translate. Sometimes it gets translated as sudden awakening or sudden enlightenment. But if you read this text and you really probe it, you understand that it's not describing something that's sudden, really in time. So it's not like a kind of awakening, but it's more like a approach to self-cultivation. You see what I'm saying? It's different. When you say the direct teaching or direct awakening, it's not meant to be a sort of a time-specific, like a thunderbolt out of the blue, flash of light, and you're sitting there, boom, samadhi, I got enlightened, and you write down a verse. But you're laughing, but a lot of people, when Buddhism first came to the West, thought that was what? And they were hungry for satori and samadhi experiences. And they thought, if I just sit here long enough, suddenly it will come to me, and like lightning flashing out, I'll have this sudden awakening. Now, in a sense, it can happen, or phases of awakening can happen rather quickly. or not. But that's not the nature of awakening. Awakening is something that is a kind of approach that you take to your practice rather than a moment of something happening. So what he means by direct is it's non-dual, and it's in this here and now, and it's not looking outside for any supports or crutches or anything like that. And it's not even using provisional teachings, like recitation or bowing or any of that. None of them are bad, and they can all be used effectively, but he's saying all provisional stages and steps are the opposite of the dun, immediate direct. So it's immediate, if you want to use that word, but in the technical sense of the word immediate, meaning not mediated by other processes, including thinking, wishing, willing, learning, and even reasoning. So immediate means not mediated by that, is directly seen through the cleansing of your own klesha and your own faults and bad habits and so forth. And when that ground is clear, you see, and that's the word he uses here. He says, Jin, you see things as they really are. You don't get any awakening. You don't get enlightened. You grow into it. You become awakened. It's a growth. It's a development rather than something you get, which would make sense because how could you get what you already have whole and complete? So it's really important to understand what he means by direct teaching. It's direct in the sense that it's non-dual and it's pointing directly, straightly at your own mind and your own nature to cultivate, not anything outside. Now, ironically, it could be a lot slower. Because any of you thought, well, I'm going to clean this thing up and become a Buddha by tomorrow lunch at least. And you sit down to clean it up and work on it. And I'm going to be directly. You're not going to say, oh, Amitabha, help me, or anything like that. It's going to be, what's going on here? Check my own mind, catch it. Whew. Good luck. It could not be sudden necessarily. It could take a while. Habits and tendencies can, almost like crustaceans, they can grow, and they're really hard to unpack. So the directness means, I say who, what, when, and where. Who is the directness? You. That's what the direct teaching is. You who. You who. Who is you? Who is the focus of the direct teaching? You, me. Okay? That's the first one. What is it? It's when the mad mind stops. What is this awakening? It's not something you get. It's not something mysterious. It's not something mystical. When the mad mind stops, the confused thoughts and those thirsts, that very stopping is called bodhi. Now, I'm quoting the text. When the mad mind stops, that very stopping is bodhi. So that's the what of it. So it's you stopping your mad mind. Ugh. And where does it occur? In your next life. So don't worry. No! It occurs now, here and now. He says, why don't you right now, as you're sitting there in that little brown cushion, awaken to your true nature? And he's not being rhetorical. He's saying that potential is in the here and now. It's no place else. So it's not in the past, reminiscing about what was there and you lost it and now it's too late, and oh, if I could only go back to the golden age of my childhood or whatever. And it's not in some distant future, well, if I just wait and I hope, the Buddha will come on a white horse and whisk me up and off we'll go to the Pure Land together. Okay? It's right here now, in the ground of your own being. So that's the where. And the when is as soon as that work is done. So when does it happen? Sudden, immediate, slow, fast. When the work is done, it happens. When the work isn't done, nothing happens. This is really pragmatic. I mean, it's like in American pragmatism, it's sort of like right in your lap, you do it. You don't have anybody else to blame. You can take credit for it if you want, but you also have to accept blame when it's not. See, I like to take credit for what I do and then blame others for what they... But this is both. You have radical freedom and radical responsibility. But that's what the direct teaching means. Okay. So he says, here now in this great Brahma monastery, which this assembly is taking place, I have explained the direct teaching. I hope that all living beings throughout the Dharma realm, the realm of all existence, upon hearing this will see their nature and realize Buddhahood. And this, by the way, is if this, then that. If you see the nature, you will realize Buddhahood. It's not, oh, I hope they'll see it, and. It means by seeing their nature, realize Buddhahood. Because there's no other way to realize Buddhahood except by seeing and recognizing your own nature. At that time, everyone who was listening to the master's explanation, and then it gives the names, Prefect Wei, who was the first one, the officials, the Taoist lady, all experienced an awakening. Now, we translated this as an awakening because it means a kind of unusual understanding or an extraordinary understanding they didn't have before, but they didn't experience Bodhi. Okay? It wouldn't make sense based on everything else it said. You know, if you could just say a few words and everybody saw it immediately, that would be pretty remarkable. But they experienced an awakening. My guess the awakening was, wow, we got to do this ourselves. I mean, it's like cold water suddenly coming. First is the awakening like, I can do this. I can become, because he said you can become Buddha. So that's pretty powerful to hear that, not think that it's something else outside. But then the next stage is, the awakening is, and it's on the ground, I have to cultivate, which is me. And that's a kind of awakening too, because it's in a sense both very religious and spiritual, and not religious and spiritual at all. It's very worldly, and it's very accessible, it's very psychological, and yet from that ground comes the world transcending. So that's why you'll have phrases like Semyo's, the question goes to the master, it says, how can I find the Buddha? And the response is, Fo Joshu Qin, your mind is just the Buddha. The Buddha is just your own mind. And then the next question is, how can I find the great way, the Dao, to get to the Buddha? And the answer is, you're standing on it. It's the ground right under your feet. So in other words, we think of the great way as some heavenly mystical path, but actually it's the ground right under your feet. And you only get to that by walking the ground under your feet, which is your own life. And where's the great Buddha? It's your own mind. However numbed and tied up it might be now, it's just a numbed and tied up Buddha. So release him. That's the awakening. And then they bowed in unison and said to the master and exclaimed with delight, outstanding. Who would ever expected that in Lingnan, a Buddha would appear in the world? Now, that's a kind of funny ending. But you see the footnote. Lingnan was the area where this was occurring, but it was also where the Sixth Patriarch was from. So there's a kind of double, I think at least a double meaning here. One meaning might be, who would have guessed we'd have a Buddha right here in Berkeley? You know, or right here in South Toledo or something. You know, because you think, I got to go someplace far to find the Buddha. Climb that mountain, you know, get to that cave and I find the Buddha. The Buddha's. So they said, wow, he's right here at home. But it also has a meaning of, he's actually from this kind of not particularly highly civilized place. Remember when he first came in, he was from the south. And they said, how could a barbarian like you? So he's sort of like East Texas or something, you know, coming to Boston. Sorry, I mean, just... So it's like East Texas, you come to Boston, you got your cowboy boots on and your hat, and you know, like, howdy, I want to be a Buddha. And somebody says, how could you possibly become a Buddha? You know, and so you got this kind of sense here that there's a double entendre. Not only is it local, he did it, but he's also coming from humble circumstances. But this is a perfect closing because it really illustrates the point that it's not high or low. It's not something that is learned or not learned. It has to do with the straightening out of your own mind and heart. That's where Buddhas come from. So it's really a nice ending. Yes? Which line?
False and true both set aside.
Oh, false and true both set aside. This will come up again. And he uses an expression later. He says, before the thought of good and evil arises. Did we get to Ming Wei yet?
That was in chapter 1.
Oh, remember Ming Wei? You don't remember Ming Wei. So once he got the Dharma, he got certified that he had it. His teacher said, go off because a lot of people are going to try to steal the robe and bowl from you. So go and hide. And then this one person, Ming Wei, who was a kind of a martial artist, retired general, wanted to get the robe and bowl, so he chased him and caught up with him. And
18.
Wei Ming. 18. Excuse me if I got my tones wrong, Wei Ming. But since he changed his name, we don't have to worry. So let's add page 18.
What was on page 18? The story starts on 17.
So the story starts in 17. If you want to, go back and read the story. Anyways, he thinks the robe and bowl can convey this awakening thing, and now that he's got it, he wants the robe and bowl. And then he suddenly realizes, the teacher says to him, it's not the robe and bowl, it's your mind. Oh, he says, you mean awakening's in my mind and not in the robe and bowl? And he says, oh, great, great. And he says, is there a secret? And he says, no, there's no secret. Just cultivate your own mind, that's Buddha. If you don't cultivate it, it's not Buddha. And then he asks him the question, he says, so, what is Hui Neng's mind before a thought of good and evil? How does it go?
Before a thought of good and evil, what is venerable?
Oh, so he said, before a thought of good and evil, what's this mind? And he gives that question to him, and that's the same meaning here when false and true both set aside. And what it's saying is this essential nature, this mind, is so clear and so unperturbed and so bright that it doesn't have to calculate good or bad. It sees things immediately as they are and therefore doesn't make a mistake. But once you have a thought of good or bad, you've already left that original ground and got into something that's more discursive and actually a little more disappointing, because when you try to maneuver by that, then you're into a cost-benefit analysis. And what he's saying is, like I said earlier, when the water is unmoved, the clouds or the stars are perfectly reflected. That's before. But once there's a movement, then it looks like in, out, good, bad, right, wrong. So he's proposing a goodness that is before even thoughts of good and evil. It's so pure and undisturbed that it is actually pristine and doesn't need to calculate. It doesn't need to think, because thinking is adding a layer to immediate perception. This is a very interesting concept because it's implying that our ability to know what to do and to do things rightly is innate, it's untroubled, and it is quick as lightning if we honor it and let it be. But it's by thinking and calculating and so forth that we get rights and wrongs and so forth. And so for some people, they can say it's almost like, I can remember for me the first time I was encouraged to kill by my uncles who took me hunting. This instinctual, no, I shouldn't, I knew it was wrong, and yet all that pressure was there to take that gun and shoot something. Well, that was before a thought of good and evil. Even before the thought of good and evil came, I knew that. And so if I had gone with them, then I'd be down a road constantly, good and evil, bad, right, da-da-da-da-da. And if I kept that, I lose their respect, but then I'd have to, it's not like something I had to think about. So there's moments when we can restore that, where you see very clearly, what it is, what's to be done. You don't even have to think or calculate. That's that mind operating its natural state. And that's why it's called, in a sense, pure, because nothing disturbs its absolute clear seeing. I don't know if that helps. So. Okay, yeah. And the thing is, it's not something mystical you attain. He's saying it's what you have all along. And it's by thinking and calculating and neglecting it that we get confused. And we say, what should I do? Who should I be with? Da-da-da. And you know from here almost. And we deny that, and we end up then having to make choices and decisions and map out things that are never coming from a true spot because we're not listening to ourselves. So I guess what I would say about meditation in that sense, it's nothing more than at the beginning stopping the franticness and starting to listen to yourself again. And by listening to yourself and observing yourself, you'll see where you're tied up, where you're bound, where you're unfree, and you'll also see where your natural pure tendencies are asking, like grass wanting to grow through concrete, wanting to be nurtured and come up. And by that quietness, you can observe and gradually restore that original ground and tie the others. But if you don't stop to listen, you'll never hear it, you'll never see it. You'll be a mystery to yourself. You're going to have other people tell you, what am I thinking? What should I do? Why are you asking somebody else? It's like nobody really knows anybody else. And the best we can do sometimes is know a little bit about ourselves. But our thinking we're knowing everybody else is just a lot of projection, most of the time, unless you're a sage and you're like that water and you're just reflecting. So to know yourself, the beginning of Socrates' idea of wisdom, to know yourself is the beginning of wisdom here too. But you can't know yourself unless you listen to yourself, and you can't listen to yourself unless you unplug. And so there's a kind of, back to last week's, my little editorial about unplugging, how important it is. It's really important, because your most important natural resource is your heart and your mind, and if we're not nurturing that and listening to it, it will get trampled on and neglected and just go the way of strip mining, in a sense. We'll strip mine our consciousness. Sorry, another editorial slipped in. Okay. Let me just say, closing, I was going to give you an example tonight, but we're out of time, so I'll save it for next week, on skill and means. And it's a story from the Buddha's life, and I thought it would really, but as I realized we ran out of time, so next week, even though we'll go into chapter 3, a little trailer here where we finish, and I'll tell you that story, because I think it's a perfect example how the Buddha would use skill and means to teach and transform somebody in a very traumatic situation, where most of us might face and never kind of think how we might expediently even use tragedy or trauma as an expedient device. You had a question?
I have to make probably.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's it for the text. We'll pick up again next week. And then we get the fun chapter, which is doubts and questions. So if your doubts and questions don't get answered here, we'll continue the chapter into your own doubts and questions. But that's where we're starting next week. So, any announcements? Anything coming up tomorrow?
Are you doing a quick story about the empty cloud? Because today is his birthday.
Oh, a
And
quick story. It's his birthday. Empty cloud is the English translation for a monk called Shu Yun, which means empty cloud. So, more? Or said enough. He was one of the teachers of my teacher. He lived in mainland China and refused to leave China during the revolution or the liberation or whatever you want to call it after 1949, and stayed there and really underwent suffering. Because, as you know, Buddhism and most religions were repressed during this time. He was a very eminent monk. He lived to be 119, 120, depending on how you calculate birth, even after receiving incredibly severe beatings by the communist. Twice he was beaten into almost death, bleeding from all his orifices and so forth. And the interesting thing about him, this part I'll tell about. This is one story tonight, because me being a kind of martial artist was really impressed with this one. They came in with metal pipes and bats, and they were convinced that he was hiding gold in the temple property, and they wanted it. And he said, I have nothing. They didn't believe him, so they beat it. They literally tried to beat it out of him. And they beat him into unconsciousness where this occurred. And they left him for dead. And then his disciples couldn't do anything. They came back, and he was just a pile of bloody heap on the floor. But he had a pulse. And so they kind of started to move him, and they wanted to take him to the hospital or a doctor. He says, no, just put me on the meditation bench and get me up in lotus position. It's like, whoa. I mean, you're going 911. No. You know, they put him up there, get him in lotus position. Within 7 days of sitting, he was up to walking, eating, and moving around again all by himself. All the bleeding had stopped and whatnot. So, you know, that means he was kind of sitting, like really sitting, right? So I'm just saying the power of that particular practice is pretty awesome. And this, by the way, happened twice. They heard he came back, and they came back again and did the same thing. And he came back again another time. Twice on this. You can read this. This is in the record of his. He has an autobiography. It's called Empty Cloud. So that's his birthday today. He was one of the teachers of my teacher. And it's someone who inspired me, because he was someone who did a bowing pilgrimage across China in his 40s to repay the kindness of his mother particularly. And when I read that, it inspired me to sort of take up that practice as well. So a very inspiring interest in life. You want something good to read his autobiography. And ask Locke. Locke, are you here?
Yeah.
Ask Locke how to get a copy that's not expensive. Because when you go and look your own, because it's out of print, you can end up in a $60 plus.
The PDF is free online.
Yeah, Stacy.
Google empty cloud.
Google empty cloud. I'll have to put empty cloud in my cloud storage. Whoa! Okay, sorry. Okay, so that's the story about Shuyan. Anyhow, you had an announcement.
We have scheduled like usual. Tomorrow we have the Transference Sutra lecture, 7:50. On Monday, our class is the books from the modern mind.
Yeah, and the topic is guilt. Get over it.
Guilt's the topic for what?
Yes.
Buddhism for the moment,
Doug's class on Monday.
Dog's class?
Oh, Doug's class. If I don't get to the class, should I feel guilty? Sorry. Get over it. I like that. Get over it. I add that to what I call, what is Buddhism? It's the Nike thing, just do it. Just do it. That's all. Buddhism is just do it. Don't think about it. Don't think you're going to do it later. Don't depend. Just do it. And now get over it. I like that. Okay. Anything else?
I think that's all. And if you want to find more information, this is our website. Put it, Monastery.org.
Okay. We're going to do the transference. Again, I explained it last week, so no need to go into it. If people need the words, maybe we could hand out a sheet. Save your question next week. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may their minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light break the darkness of their endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Ding Li San Bao.